And away from that, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is set to launch the last round of mass voter registration next week, targeting about 6 million voters. Now, according to the Commission's Chief Executive Officer, who's also here with me, the countrywide registration starts on the 16th of January. IEBC also says it has contracted 15,000 personnel, including ICT support assistance, for the exercise. The publication of the register will be done in June.
Statistics that we also have with respect to people who have been issued with IDs and not yet registered as voters by the National Registration Bureau indicates that we have about 9 million Kenyans with IDs who have not been able to register as voters. So if you talk about the target group of people that we need to register, we already have about 9 million Kenyans out there that we're supposed to register.
And Ezra Chiloba joins me right here in studio, and we're going to speak about the mass voter registration. But before we do that, let's just delve into one thing that everyone has been talking about, the manual backup system. How foolproof is this? Now it's been signed into law by the president, the amendments that actually originated from IEBC. That's what we were told. So how foolproof is this, and can you guarantee Kenyans that the elections are going to be free and fair from your end?
Well, first of all, is to clarify that the law does not say that we go to have manual backup system. It talks about complementary mechanism to be able to, that the complementary mechanism that are simple to be able to secure the vote, but does not prescribe what type of that mechanism. So that is left to the Commission. And in our appearance before the Senate committee, we were able to clarify our position. And our position was very clear. We were asking very simple questions. We will go to voting. On the voting day, voters line up on the queue. And perchance something happens to the voter registration or identification system. What happens to the voters who are on the queue? Which mechanism do we fall back on? We also said a voter will show up at the polling station. Yeah. And you will have identified, say, 50% of them. Maybe the 51st percent number of voters cannot be identified using the system. What happens to those voters? We're asking very simple questions.
So what complementary system are you suggesting?
No, for us, we said we needed to come up with a procedure that is very clear, borrowing on the Ghanaian model, which says that in the event that the biometric system fails to identify a voter, then you take them through an alternative system which is visual, which is more or less, we'll say, is manual, is a paper trail, a printout of the register. But then there must be a clear procedure that ensures there's accountability and proper checks and balances to ensure that the spirit of the law is actually enhanced.
So it's a manual backup.
In that case, we may call it a manual backup. That's one of the models.
But how foolproof is that? Because that is where the main bone of contention has been. How foolproof is it? Well, because the opposition says that this will enable people to rise up and vote, even people who are not on the register.
Right. I mean, if you put in proper checks and balances, and number one is that it must be very clear from the word go what procedure must be followed when you come across such a situation. And every actor knows at the polling station you have party agents, you have observers. So if there's a procedure that includes all these actors, and there's a process of auditing the same process, and people agreed upon it, I don't think it should cause any process. And again, we're also talking about a number that may not be significant. We're not talking about a total collapse of the system. We are talking about the 1 or 2% of voters that may be disenfranchised by virtue of the fact that the system has not worked on the election day.
Okay. Yeah. And are you prepared for this mass voter registration? Because essentially that's what we are here to talk about.
Well, we are glad so far with the plans that we've put in place. We are starting this exercise on Monday next week, on the 16th. Okay. And the idea is to enable as many Kenyans as possible to register as voters. We are looking at 6 million voters in the best case scenario. Mm-hmm. The worst case scenario we're also planning for is 4 million voters, based on the experience that we had in the first phase last year. So we are already engaging stakeholders. Tomorrow we are meeting with the political parties, actors. On Wednesday we'll be meeting civil society organizations as well as faith-based organizations to just share our plan for this exercise and calling upon them to support the process.
Okay, but we were talking about the mass voter registration that is just about to start.
Right.
But Daniel Wandolo on Twitter says, Chiloba shouldn't insult our intelligence. We all know an election can be won by a single vote. Hence, we can't validate that. What is your response to this? This is in the backdrop of the whole manual system and electronic system of relaying the vote.
I mean, and I think he's also right that elections can be won by the single vote, and our responsibility is to ensure that that single vote is protected.
So how can you guarantee to him? Because we've seen before when the election, when the electronic system failed, and then you backed up to the manual, and then the numbers were all of a sudden inflated.
No,
it was contested even in court. How are you going to make sure this time that's not going to happen?
No, but first of all, we also have to distinguish about the different types of technologies that the Commission has employed before. We had an independent system which was called Biometric Voter Registration System, which gave us 14.4 million voters. And that, according to our assessment, it succeeded. Then we had the electronic voter identification devices, which did not perform well on the election day. That's when we had total failure in terms of identification. Then we had results transmission, which worked that is for the presidential election, worked up to 48%. And the rest, of course, did not come through. So we must be clear in terms of which technology we are talking about. So when it comes to identification, our responsibility is to ensure that every eligible voter has got a chance to vote. And we are not saying that we're going to go manual 100%. We are saying that our systems are partly electronic, and we are investing in them to ensure that they're efficient and be able to secure the vote.
But the main thing that Kenyans are struggling with is how come you can't use this same system that you've used before, even in by-elections, to ensure that this is totally electronic?
To just respond to that also is that the system that we used in the by-elections, successful so, the old systems that we used, but the laws that the President signed today are already talking about an integrated system that combines, that integrates voter identification, voter registration, and results transmission. So we've moved away from the system that we had previously, although with a lot of lessons learned from the previous system. So we're moving into a new system. And ours is to ensure that the systems that we acquire are going to give us efficient and credible electoral processes across those three main processes of results, of registration, identification, and results transmission.
Okay, let's talk about the timelines real quick because we're running out of time. Is IEBC ready for the polls on August 8th?
Yeah,
because you're launching the mass voter registration and you're targeting about 6 to 4 million.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, when we started last year, we were very clear in terms of where we wanted to go. We had a roadmap that was very clear. In September this year, Parliament passed a new law that a little bit changed our roadmap, so which we've been trying to catch up, so in terms of activities. And the fact that we launched our registration or voters program today, we are launching that next week, but we started talking about it today, is basically pushing towards that credible election come August 8th. So our plea is that Kenyans must now rally towards the August 8th elections, because what we see in the political space is that you have a feeling that many actors are not ready for this election.
Okay.
But for us, where we sit, we are prepared for this election. What we need is to support one another and be on the same page to be able to deliver a credible election.
Okay, finally, before I let you go, will you guarantee the likes of Wandolo, who just texted that this is going to be a credible poll in 2017?
He should not be scared, he should not fear. Our responsibility is to ensure that his right is secured, and that is ensuring that his vote counts at the end of the day.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have. Thanks for making time.
Thank you.
That's IEBC CEO Ezra Chiloba.